Taiwan is bursting with heaps of fun places to explore. Join me, Amber Hatfield, as I hit up travel hotspots, soak up some culture, and hunt down hidden gems. Let's go! Hello and welcome back to another episode of Let's Go. I'm your host, Amber Hatfield. In this week's episode, we are going to be talking fashion, specifically about thrifted fashion and where to find it in Taiwan. And I'm sure it's going to be a very fun episode, so let's go. Today, I'm joined by Lisa.
Hello.
Lisa is from the States, from Florida, and lives in Taiwan and has an Instagram channel about thrifting and thrifting clothes in markets and different places in Taiwan, which is really cool. So Lisa, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit and telling me about your background and kind of what brought you to Taiwan?
Yes. So I'm originally from Florida, the northern part. So actually we have really similar weather to Taipei. Originally I came here to study Chinese. I studied economics in my undergrad and I had a really deep interest in learning Chinese and doing Chinese economics. Actually, in fact, this is my second time living in Taipei because I studied abroad here about 4 or 5 years ago for my undergrad. And that's when I started learning Chinese. I mean, I can't say my Chinese is well developed, but I'm definitely trying.
Yeah.
And so after studying Chinese here for a little bit, I decided to stay a little bit longer. And I can't say what started my thrifting journey here, only that I really missed wearing vintage clothes from back home, especially down south. We love thrifting, going to Goodwill, going to different secondhand shops. And I had explored the vintage scene in Taipei, but I wouldn't say that it was a bad experience, but it wasn't like what I was used to back home, where you can find things for really cheap, interesting treasures. Here, things were more curated, more in the Japanese style vintage versus the American style. They prefer brighter, more mixed textiles and oversized fits versus like America. We have specific eras, Y2K, 80s, 90s fashion.
Okay.
So that I felt was a bit harder to find. And then the price point was quite different from what I was used to as well.
Okay.
And I had been to a flea market the first time coming to Taipei all those years ago. Actually, it was kind of a funny story because we read online that the best time was to go was right when it opened. But it opened, I think, at like 5:36. My friend and I, we rode bikes because the buses weren't available that early. And we rode bikes all the way to the market. And then we discovered that they were just still opening up. So we probably should have come a bit later.
Yeah.
And so we had decided to go again about a year and a half back. And I started to look more closely at what they had. And I realized, oh, wait, this is kind of like going to Goodwill in the US if I look a bit more closely. And I found a dress in a pile, and that's kind of what started it all. It was just, oh, that's a really pretty dress, and oh, I think that can actually fit me, so maybe I should take a closer look.
Okay, so that's like kind of what got you into doing this thrifting thing. Okay, so that one find was like the thing that started it all.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So like what kind of made you decide to start doing the IG page?
That was really interesting because I had no intention of ever doing an IG page at all. I think I had been thrifting for about a few months and I was constantly finding things and slowly replacing everything in my closet with things from the flea market. It actually became kind of a ritual to go like every week, wake up early and just rummage through the piles.
Yeah.
And my friends started to accompany me because I was showing them all the cool things I was finding. And we all were talking about how we never had discovered something like this before and how we all really enjoy thrifting. And constantly my friends were suggesting, oh, you should sell stuff. You should like make a page. You should spread the word. And I was like, oh, no, like it's fine. I'm sure people know, or this is just for me. Like that seems like a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then eventually, I guess I just was like, you know what? I feel like people don't know about this. I kind of want to share. Like I've found so many amazing things and I've met some cool people and maybe I should start sharing what I know. And that's kind of how this all started.
Yeah, so it's really funny because when I found your Instagram page or Instagram account, and I saw that you went to one flea market, which we'll talk about later, but I was like, oh, I didn't know that was there. So then I was like, right, I'm going to go there. I'm going to go real early in the morning and stuff. So I only realized that was there because of your account. So I was like, wow, this is really cool. I really like finding out about this stuff from people. Yeah, so I think your account is like inspiring me.
Thank you. Actually, I've had quite a few people reach out in Taiwan to like share like, oh, how they went, what they found, that they also have been living here for so long and didn't really know about like the flea market scene or the thrifting scene necessarily.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it's definitely a smaller scene here in Taiwan than in other places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I want to know if like you mostly thrift all of your outfits that you have now, or do you still like shop in other stores, like typical stores, or do you mainly just like thrift everything?
I have not stepped foot in an actual store, I think, since I started thrifting.
Wow.
I think 95, nearing 100% of my closet is now thrifted in Taiwan, besides like a few pieces I thrifted in the US or like things I can't necessarily find here.
Awesome. Wow, that's great. And so how often do you go thrifting, and like how do you go about it? Like what's your process?
So I try to go every Saturday now, because even if I don't necessarily need to buy anything more, but it's become such a lovely ritual.
Mm-hmm.
On the weekend that I just find myself really looking forward to during the week.
Yeah.
So normally what I'll do is I'll wake up about now like 7:30. I'll just have like a quick snack, take the bus over to Fuhe Flea Market, which is my favorite one because it's more chaotic, which I find I do enjoy.
Okay.
And I go and I grab the Taiwanese sausages that they have there. I'm friends with the lady who runs the stall now because I go so often. So I don't have to say what I want. She just knows. We talk a little bit in Chinese, which is really fun. And then I'll go and I'll start from the back and I'll spend about 2, maybe 3 hours if there's quite a few things just searching. I'll just have my headphones in, listening to music and rummage through. And I love going to the flea markets here, especially Fuhe, because it feels so nostalgic.
Okay.
Because they don't just have clothes, but they have a whole arrangement of goods.
Yeah.
And so you'll see things from like different eras, and it kind of reminds me of childhood, like while I'm searching, and just the feeling of, oh, this is so interesting, even if I don't buy something.
Yeah.
Like you just see so many fun and unique pieces.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, if I'm feeling up for it, I will take another bus all the way to Yongchu, which is an indoor market right after Shenyi.
Okay.
I think it's the Yongchun station. And I'll go there, which is a little bit nicer in the summer since it's indoors.
Okay.
And I don't have to worry about the weather,
Mm-hmm.
which I definitely do in Fuhe because it gets quite hot in the summer.
Yeah.
And that one's a little bit more curated since it's inside, but I still do find quite a lot of unique pieces there. But it's definitely more clothing versus Fuhe, which is just everything.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, like, what would be your kind of process of like deciding whether or not to pick something out?
Oh, no, that's very in-depth. So in the beginning, I think I was a lot more free in what I was picking because, there are so many things I can replace in my closet, and there's so many unique things, versus now where I've thrifted almost everything I have. So it's really hard for me to pick out a piece, I would say, because I think, I already have that or something similar. So my motto is a few things. One, it has to be old.
Okay.
I don't want anything new. I want it to look like I'm wearing your grandmother's clothing.
Okay.
And fabric, I find one of the things that got me started in thrifting also in the US was I feel that the cut and quality of older clothes is just so much better. Like it feels nicer, it looks nicer on the body. So that's also one of my things is cut, fabric, and then uniqueness. Like I like feeling special when I walk out in vintage clothing because I know the likelihood of someone wearing anything close to what I'm wearing is very slim.
Right.
So you have that kind of perceived character about you.
Yeah.
And that's something I really enjoy. So I look for that in my pieces.
Uh-huh.
And I have a saying, if I don't fall in love with a piece the moment I see it, then it's not for me.
Okay.
So all of my clothes are like little bits of my heart because I just absolutely love everything I wear.
Yeah. Awesome. And so do you have like a personal style? I guess you did just say about wanting to wear older clothes, but like how do you feel what your personal style is and how like thrifting kind of affects that style?
Oh, that's so important. And that was actually something I kind of fell into really early on
Uh-huh.
is perceived style, because there's so many range of eras when it comes to vintage and so many different ways you can dress yourself. And one of the reasons I fell in love with Fuhe Market was because it allowed me to continuously explore what is my style. Because one of the blocks in fashion is money and time. So being able to find so many interesting pieces from so many different eras has allowed me to delve more into what is my style and what do I like, and playing around with different silhouettes and patterns. Like, for example, I've never worn brown before coming to Taiwan, but now I wear so much brown. Like, it's just a small thing, but like even just adding another like color palette into my scheme has kind of already changed things. And that's like something I really love. I love experimenting with different sides, like a more classier and 90s look versus like a very gothic Y2K aesthetic. Those I think are currently my favorites right now.
Okay. And I wanted to ask you like whether or not you think that thrifting has maybe made it easier for you to find clothes that fit you in Taiwan. I mean, like for me personally, being tall, and I think like in Taiwan in general, like there's people are quite slim here and like people are small in general. So I often find it really hard to find clothes myself being so tall and just a bigger size in general than like the Asian silhouette, I guess. And when I try to find clothes, I often can't find them. So I wonder if like how easy it is to find clothes like while thrifting for a Western sized person.
It's quite easy actually.
Yeah.
Because that was one of my fears when I started thrifting was, will I even be able to find stuff in my size? Because I feel like my shopping experience coming to Taiwan was quite difficult. In being, because I'm a very curvy body, which is really hard to find clothes here because they just don't really have that body type.
Yeah.
And I remember like going into stores kind of feeling, a little fearsome because it's like, oh, will I find something and will it even be something I like? And so what I started to do was shop online, which caused me to fall into Shein because, quick, easy fashion. But I never really liked that. Like, it was fun because I could play around with styles, but I never liked the fabric. And, it's a hit or miss on whether things fit you properly.
Yeah.
So I think I kind of always longed to go back to thrifting. And much to my surprise and delight, thrifting, there are so many body sizes out there in terms of clothing, everywhere from extra small to plus size. I have found all sorts of clothing for all types of body types. So that's also was kind of what pushed me to do my page, was to let people know like, hey, even though we're in Taiwan, there is clothing out there for you that you can find in these places.
Great. Awesome. I should start going even more then.
You definitely should.
I want to talk a little bit about like your history with thrifting in the US, because you've mentioned a few times that you do thrift in the US and you have before. So how do you feel like thrifting in Taiwan and thrifting in the US is different?
I would say the main difference is here I love the flea market, which is definitely an outdoors thing. And versus in the US, we have flea markets, but mostly you go to like Goodwill or thrift shops, or you have like vintage curated stores. So I would say in terms of like my thought process is pretty much the same thing of just mindlessly going through clothes until I find like a beautiful piece. I would say accessibility is a little bit easier here for me since the metro system, I can just go whenever.
Okay.
But I would say in terms of like the thrifting scene, it's much more quiet. So it's a little bit harder, I think, to find spots to go because no one really talks about it. And normally if you're interested in those kinds of things, you just talk about like the vintage stores, which are definitely much more expensive and different style. So yeah, I would definitely say awareness here is a little bit less. And then if you're shy about speaking Chinese, going to something like the flea market here can be a little bit daunting, especially because you're just dealing with the IEs. So it's like, oh, do I have to speak Chinese and how do I communicate? So that can be a little bit daunting as well, I think.
Yeah. So what do you think if somebody was coming here kind of for a trip or something and they wanted to go thrifting? Like, where would you kind of recommend that they should go?
Oh, the flea market.
Okay.
Because other places are just closed, but the flea market is just a whole array of nostalgia. So even if you don't find something, you're bound to see something that will interest you or make you feel like an emotion from your childhood or just pique your interest.
Yeah. And that's Fuhe Flea Market, right?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of Fuhe Flea Market.
And are there any other flea markets around Taipei as well?
There are quite a few. Yongchun, the one I mentioned, that just happens to be indoors, but it is still a flea market.
Okay.
There is one in New Taipei, which is Chongxin, but I don't really like to go to that one. It's a little bit farther away, and they have some stuff. I would say it's more geared towards male clothing, surprisingly, or household items. I'm just not as likely to find something I'm interested in versus Fuhe. I will always find something I'm interested in.
Okay. And I feel like recently on one of your stories, I saw something that you found like was a new store or like a new place that you were excited about.
I did. So I found, actually, this is so funny because on Instagram, I saw someone else, a Taiwanese girl who mentioned this shop.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, I've got to go look. It looks like a little warehouse, but it's up near Shilin Station. And it is like a little Goodwill warehouse. So it's very reminiscent of how I feel shopping in the US.
Okay.
Because it's in this large basement underground, which kind of feels daunting to go into. But it's covered in things of everything. Actually, I was talking with the owner and there's so many things, they don't even price it. There's just too many things to price everything, like individually. So basically, you just pick something and you go to the front and then you can barter a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Owner, which
Okay.
is really cool.
Practice your Chinese bartering skills.
Yeah.
That's all we've got time for this week's episode of Let's Go. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll be joined again next week by Lisa as we'll finish up our chat and talking about more places to find thrifted clothes in Taipei. See you next time.